Hello and welcome to the 5 and 5, this time from Uganda. First time we've been to Uganda on the 5 and 5 series. And being that we are very soon going to be doing a lot of work out of and events in East Africa, Uganda borders some of the countries that we're visiting soon. So it was great to get the insight from our friend Grace, who's an experienced and growing lawyer in the country of Uganda. So Uganda as a country is really on a bit of a robust upswing at the moment. GDP is growing and accelerating by 6 to 7.5% every year. Lots and lots of investment into oil and gas and infrastructure. Country really on the up. The legal market hosts a legal tech event there every June or July, I think it is. I'm very much hoping to visit very soon. It's a legal market and a financial market with opportunities galore. So it's one to watch out for. And thanks to Grace for joining us to give us a really good insight into exactly what's happening there.
Uganda's economy is showing resilience and steady growth despite global and regional challenges. The World Bank projects GDP growth about 6% for 2025, and most of the work that is being done by the law firms here in Uganda are in respect to infrastructure development, and of course you know that there's oil production related projects like the East African crude oil pipeline in play, and some work in the agricultural productivity sector and tourism and trade and telecoms. So most of the work that is being done by the law firms here is so much in that space. But however, inflationary pressures, currency volatility, and high borrowing costs remain concerns for businesses. So SMEs, for example, are still struggling with access to affordable finance, but the government is pushing for industrialization and export-led growth. Yeah, the legal market is expanding, particularly in sectors aligned with Uganda's economic priorities, energy, infrastructure, oil and gas at the moment, fintech, banking, real estate, and ESG also. So most of the law firms are busy with advisory work around project financing, corporate restructuring, and regulatory compliance and dispute resolution. So in-house legal teams are growing as companies seek to manage regulatory risks proactively, especially in telecoms. The big telecoms like MTN Uganda, Airtel Uganda. In the banking sector, banks like Standard Chartered Bank, Stanbic Bank. In the insurance sector, in the energy space, big companies like Total are growing their in-house, they're beefing up their in-house legal teams to match up with the regulatory and legal and regulatory compliance departments. So there is a rising demand for lawyers skilled in contract management, ESG, data privacy, and governance. So that space is growing here in the country. There's going to be growth in the oil and gas sectors. The Chilenga and Kingfisher oil projects and related infrastructure will create massive demand for legal services. Contracts, employment law, environmental compliance, tax structuring within that sector. We expect a lot of work coming in the energy space in respect to that, because we are moving from upstream to midstream production. So there's going to be a lot of work coming in that space. But also, we think that there's going to be a lot of work coming in the real estate and construction space. Uganda is a developing country, and there's a lot of population growth and urbanization taking place. And oil and gas sector related projects coming up in places like Hoima district. There's going to be a lot of business booming in construction spaces for hotels, residentials, commercial buildings, and even roads. Then we also expect some growth in the technology and fintech space. It's going to be a lot of there's a lot of commercialization happening around mobile money, payment systems, crypto regulations, and digital banking, which are expanding very fast. And so there's going to be a lot of requirement for legal input on licensing, data protection, and consumer protection. Then we also expect some growth in the public-private partnerships, where we see that the government is trying to create, to seek PPPs for infrastructure development, offering opportunities for procurement advisory and regulatory advisory by law firms. And in the environmental and climate law, we have seen a lot of work that is being done by the environmental activists and climate activists towards green financing, ESG compliance, and climate risk management, which we think is going to be driving Uganda's sector, legal sector in the coming years. Yes, but we think that this is going to be selective. It is selective. So the legal market is seeing much job growth, but selectively. There is high demand for skilled mid-level and senior lawyers, particularly in corporate and commercial law, energy projects, dispute resolution, banking, tax, and regulatory compliance. We see that most of the lawyers, that most of the hiring entities want people who have got some experience in terms of practice. So they're looking for 12 to 10 years of 10 to 12 years of practice, some 5 years of practice, 3 years of practice. So there is still high competition for entry-level roles, with many firms preferring candidates who come in with practical training, internships, and clerkships. And so, whereas in-house positions are growing too, with banks, insurance companies, and fintechs looking at people who have much more experience in the field. So there is much growth, but it's selective to the extent that there is competition for entry-level jobs in terms of law firms, where law firms are now looking at people who have gotten some experience in terms of internship and clerkship, whereas the in-house roles are always looking out for people who have some practice experience, between 5 to 10 years of experience. We think that the country is going into elections in 2026, general elections, and we think that that's going to be creating uncertainties in investment and legal demand, depending on the political climate that is going to come up during that time of elections. And there's a lot of regulatory tightening. Authorities are actively updating laws around financial services, digital technologies, environmental protection, and corporate governance. So firms and in-house teams must be alert to regulatory shifts. We have seen new laws coming up, like the Competition Act that is in place now, and the regulations are being worked on. So we think that is going to be a big change in the legal terrain here in the country. We also see regional integration. We see that there's been Uganda's active participation in the East African community. There is the East African Power Pool that has been signed now into law, with different players in the power sector coming together to pool power availability in that space. But also African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA agreements, opening up cross-border trade and investment opportunities, increasing demand for regional legal expertise. We have seen that there is some effort towards making sure that there is cross-border practice between Uganda and different East African countries. So there's also a shift towards specialization. Clients are demanding more specialized advice, especially in energy, tax, technology, and ESG law, pushing firms to either specialize or collaborate with niche experts. Law firms here in Uganda are much more driving towards specialization. You'll find that many of the law firms that we have are now in boutique practice. So boutique practice here is becoming very common as compared to traditional practice.